8 years ago, my life shattered in a single night. The night my husband Tom uncovered my affair with my boss David. It wasn't some careless slip or random accident. It was a slow unraveling of secrecy, suspicion, and silence finally exploding into truth. Tom had sensed something long before that night. The late nights at the office that never used to happen. The sudden business trips with vague explanations. The emotional distance that crept in between us like a cold draft through a cracked window. It had all added up for him. But nothing could prepare me for the look in his eyes when he confronted me. There was no need for words. He had found emails, explicit, undeniable proof of my betrayal. And I didn't try to lie. I didn't even try to soften the blow. I just stood there, every excuse dying in my throat, as I watched the man I had once promised forever to crumble in front of me. His pain twisted into fury and then into a hollow sort of disbelief, like he was staring at a stranger. He left that night without saying much. 2 full days passed before I saw him again, and when he returned, it was only to pack his things. That time he left for good. The days that followed were like drifting through fog. I took a leave of absence from work, not because of shame at first, but because I couldn't bring myself to see David. I couldn't pretend we were just colleagues. I couldn't look at him without being reminded of the damage I'd done. Everything about that office, the elevator ride, the way the receptionist said my name, the scent of the hallway near David's office, it all made my skin crawl. I quit a week later. Tom filed for divorce soon after. I didn't contest it. There was no point in dragging it out. I had broken us, and no legal battle could undo the damage. I moved into a small apartment on the other side of town, the kind of place where no one asked questions, where the anonymity was almost comforting. I had never been so completely alone, and for a long time I welcomed it. We had no children, so the paperwork was simple, but emotionally it was anything but. Our families had known each other for years. Friends took sides. Some didn't take any at all. They just faded from my life like I was something contagious. The loneliness was sharp, almost violent in its silence. But I couldn't blame anyone but myself. Eventually, I found another job at a smaller firm where no one knew my name, my face, or my story. It was a relief to be invisible. I buried myself in work, staying late just to avoid going home to my empty apartment. The guilt hung over me constantly, not just for the affair, but for everything that had led to it. I had to face the fact that it hadn't just been a moment of weakness. It had been a long pattern of avoidance, denial, and poor communication. I hadn't told Tom what I was feeling. I hadn't asked him to meet me halfway when things got hard. I had chosen to look for answers in the wrong place, with someone who made me feel seen in a shallow, fleeting way. Therapy became a lifeline. I needed to make sense of it, to understand why I had self-destructed at the exact moment I should have reached for help. I started uncovering parts of myself I had buried under resentment and silence. David wasn't the root of my choices. He was a symptom of something much deeper. I had felt ignored, overlooked, disconnected, but instead of speaking up, I ran. I betrayed not just Tom, but myself. Meanwhile, life went on for Tom. Through mutual friends, I heard he started dating again about a year after the divorce. Eventually, he met someone, Emily. From everything I heard, she was the opposite of me. Grounded, thoughtful, steady. She gave him the kind of love I had promised, but failed to deliver. I hated how much it hurt to imagine him with her, not because I wanted him back, but because she was everything I hadn't been. And worse, she made him happy, truly happy. And that knowledge came with a strange mix of grief and relief. 3 years after the divorce, I saw Tom again, at a wedding of a mutual friend. The moment I spotted him across the room, my chest tightened. We spoke briefly, exchanging polite hellos, but there was a cold wall between us. Not anger anymore, just a sort of quiet, irreversible distance. I caught a flicker of the old pain in his eyes, and it gutted me. I wanted to say I was sorry again. I wanted to explain, but I knew there were no words big enough to carry the weight of what had happened. Still, I kept going. Therapy continued. I joined a support group for people who had either betrayed or been betrayed. At first, I felt out of place, A shame, but over time, I started to understand the complexity of human failure. I heard stories like mine, stories that were raw, complicated, and not easily judged in black and white. I began to forgive myself, not because I deserved it, but because I needed to learn from what I had done. The affair hadn't just hurt Tom, it had damaged me, fractured my sense of self-worth. It took years to begin the slow, deliberate process of putting those pieces back together. By the 5th year, things had changed. I had co-founded a small business with a woman I met at my new job. It was something I had only ever dreamed of before. We worked hard, often to the point of exhaustion. But for the first time in forever, I felt like I was building something meaningful again, something real. The business gave me purpose, something to nurture that wasn't built on lies or guilt. Around that time, I found out Tom and Emily were engaged. I saw the pictures on social media, her hand in his, glowing, the happiness radiating from their smiles. I stared at the images longer than I should have. There was joy for him, of course. He deserved everything beautiful this life could offer. But there was also a deep, aching sadness of the life that could have been mine, had I chosen differently. They married not long after, and eventually had a child. When I heard the news, I sent a simple card. Congratulations, no expectations. Just the hope that it might mean something. Weeks later, a message appeared on my phone. It was Tom. He thanked me for the card and asked if I would meet him for coffee. He said there were things he wanted to say, not for closure in a romantic sense, but for clarity, for peace. When we met, it was quiet, like old times, but not. There was a familiarity between us, but the warmth had cooled into something gentler, more reserved. We spoke about where our lives had taken us. He told me he had struggled after the divorce, not just with anger, but with confusion and regret of his own. He said he'd come to understand that we had both let things slip between the cracks. Him, by withdrawing emotionally, and me, by turning to someone else instead of him. It didn't absolve me, but it helped to hear that he no longer saw me as just a villain. He told me he had forgiven me, not to ease my guilt, but to set himself free. That holding on to resentment had done nothing but keep him tethered to pain. He had moved on, built a new life, and needed to leave the past where it belonged. We parted that day with no promises, no rekindled hopes, just a quiet, mutual respect for who we had once been to each other, and who we had become. Today, I continue to run my business. It's thriving in ways I never expected. I've started dating again, slowly, carefully. I'm more aware now of what love is, and what it isn't. I know that joy doesn't come from secrecy or stolen moments. It comes from honesty, commitment, and the everyday choice to show up for someone and for yourself. The affair was the most painful mistake of my life. But from that wreckage, I found something worth salvaging, myself. I am not the same woman who made those choices 8 years ago. I'm not proud of the path I took, but I'm proud of the journey I made to understand it. The past will always be a part of me, but it no longer defines me. I've learned how to live with my flaws, how to speak truthfully, how to begin again. And sometimes that's the most valuable thing a broken heart can teach you.